Welcome to another edition of Walton Entertainment. Today we'll have more news, information, and entertainment from your local hometown.
Hi, welcome to Monroe Walton Center for the Arts. In the middle of summertime here, and that means summer camp. We've got 2 more summer camps left in July for you to choose from. Our summer camps run Monday through Friday from 9 to noon. And we have ages 5 to 8 and then 9 to 12 divided up in 2 different camps. It's a lot of fun. Those 2 camps are both mixed media camps. What that means is they'll be doing all kinds of projects using all kinds of media, whether it's paint or maybe collage or 3D. They'll just be doing all kinds of things. So go to our website, monroewaltonarts.org, and look up our summer camps. Feel free to come in and pick up information here about the classes we have going on. Our next big event here is Groove in the Garden, and that's in our sculpture garden. That's going to be Sunday, June 30th from 5 to 8 p.m. We'll have music and some lawn games and information out about our center and just a fun evening out. Silver Queen Taco Truck will be here selling their marvelous tacos and great food that they have. So don't miss that. There'll be a great family activity. We'll also be packing our Art MD Healing Art boxes during that time. You can just come into the center for 5 or 10 minutes, pack a couple of boxes, see what all of that is about. Our Art MD Healing Art boxes, we provide those to the hospital, to DFACs, to all kinds of social service agencies in our county. We've even given some to the City of Monroe Fire Department, all over our county, and a bunch of them to the hospital. And they're given to kids in times of trauma, loss, and stress for free by these agencies. And if you'd like to come in and help us pack up the boxes, they have an art journal, crayons, Play-Doh, a stuffed animal, and a hand-painted angel by our artists. And they're just a fabulous, life-affirming, positive thing to give to kids in a time of trauma. So all of that will be going on June 30th. That's Sunday afternoon from about 5 to 8 p.m. The mobile pharmacy bus from Walton Wellness will be here as well. Just a good, fun time to come on out. So visit us. We've got installing right now our Kids Galaxy Gallery that will open on Saturday of the previous week by the time you're seeing this. So it'll be open, and that'll be a progressive installation over the summer from our artwork from our Kids Galaxy Gallery camps. It's a lot of fun. There'll be a lot of interactive things for kids to come in and see and look at. A lot of fun for the kids. It'll be up through the end of July. So come on in, get out of the heat, visit the gallery inside. Everything is free, of course, to visit the gallery. Pick up a class list, check into our summer camps, come to Groove in the Garden, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks.
You're watching Walton Entertainment.
Nathan Franklin. I've served, this is my 3rd year as superintendent of Walton County School District. I was assistant superintendent for facilities and operations for 4 years before that. High school principal at Loganville High School for 5 years before that, assistant principal there, and spent 12 years in Gwinnett County. I graduated from Decula High School on the Harbin side, the rough side of the tracks, as I refer to it. My wife's a Loganville graduate, so that's how we ended up in Loganville. We've got 3 children in our school system. My oldest just graduated this year from Walton Grove High School. I've got a 15-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl at Youth Middle School. A little bit about our school district, and you may know some of this already, but I'll just kind of tell you where we're at in some different areas and where I think we're going. Right at just over 14,000 students. Obviously, we have sort of Circle City schools, and we have a few smaller private schools in the district. And we get along very well. You all are probably aware of our Walton Proud initiative and our One Walton initiative. It's a great partnership that involves our Chamber and Development Authority. This year, we're still building our FY20 budget. It hasn't been approved yet because we had some late information roll in from the state, but our budget this year is going to be somewhere, our general operating, which is our maintenance and operation budget, somewhere around $131 million. So it's a big machine. If you count title funds, federal title funds on top of that, we're essentially about a $150 million corporation. I think we're still the largest employer in Walton County, just right at 2,000 employees, and that counts some of our after-school part-time employees in terms of federal grant programs for after-school programs. But we've got 1,600 and about 60 full-time employees. So it's a lot of moving parts. We're a large organization. We've got a great team. And one of the challenges in public school, and your business is probably no different, but we have the task of being everything to all. And when you try to be everything to all, you usually satisfy no one. And that's a challenge in public schools. And regardless of the situation of a child, when they walk in the door, we're expected to educate them. On average, we spend roughly, with local property tax and state-earned QBE funds, we spend right at $8,200 per child, and that's on average. If my middle son walks through the door as a special needs self-contained child, obviously that cost goes up because of class size, parapro, IEP needs, etc. So, you know, some of our most fragile kids, they might cost $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year to educate. So that just gives you kind of a ballpark of the scope that we're dealing with. One thing we're proud of in Walton County, our board, even though there's been a lot of different towers, so to speak, one of the differences in public education is many of our decisions aren't made at the local level. I know that's not real surprising to some of you, but some of that is made at the state level. Much of that's made at the federal level. Pay raises, for example. You heard, no doubt, this year the governor talk about his goal in raising Georgia teachers to the national average. To do that, that involved $5,000 for certified folks. He has promised and sent $3,000 this year with the hope of $2,000 next year, which is great. Our staff deserves that. We think they need that, et cetera, et cetera. But it no program from the state or federal level ever covers the true cost. For example, that $3,000 just for certified staff, we received an extra $2 million for that. The cost is over $3 million to do that. Because if you make more in your salary in your job, other things are triggered, like FICA, Medicare, and benefit-related things. So it never covers the whole thing. So yes, we want them to have it. Yes, they deserve it. But it's a challenge for us to cover everything else that it might trigger for even something positive like that. We've continued to do that, and while we've done that over the years, our board has had the ability, thank goodness, to reduce the millage rate in the last 5 years. It hadn't been astronomical, but we've been able to tick it down a little bit, and I guess try to have a win-win, offer the best education we can afford at the same time, keeping in mind what our community asks for. I think our community as a whole, they love our schools, they love what our schools in general do for their home values, property values, and things like that, but when it comes to paying that tax bill, I think the average citizen of Walton County would say, please try not to raise my taxes. So we take that very seriously. The state of Georgia has a financial efficiency rating. It's like many programs they have. It's not perfect, but it's what they choose to use to measure the financial efficiency of public school districts. And we have a 4-star out of 5 rating in the state of Georgia, which puts us at the 92nd, 93rd percentile in terms of the 180 school districts in the state of Georgia. So we're very proud of that in terms of getting the bang for the buck, for lack of better words. The governor also mentioned a 2% pay raise for 4 specific classified jobs. And that's great. Those 4, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, custodians, and I believe, I can't remember the 4th one, but he mentioned 4. And certainly they deserve it. But if you're one of the other 100 classified positions we have, you probably feel like you work just as hard as those other 4. So most districts within 100 miles, when something like that rolls out, they try to give all their classified employees a 2% raise. And we're going to try to do the same, and that's by choice, and that's something that most all school districts are going to do around the district. But that's just an example of, in a typical year, roughly 90% of whatever new monies we think we have are going to be unfunded mandates. we try to get better and bigger with the other 10 or so percent. That's just in a nutshell on the average year. So we really don't, whatever the economy's doing and whatever new monies might arrive, we find ourselves, we don't sit around and say, oh, let's do this and that and that and this. It's usually, you know, we've got a list this long we've had for 5 years, and we can finally take that 10% of new funds outside of the unfunded mandates and do 1 or 2 things on that list of 50 things. That's the position we find ourselves in, and that's the position that all school districts find themselves in. We're very proud of our facilities. We feel like we've got modern, safe facilities in Walton County. The average school age in the nation is how old? Anybody want to guess? The average school age in the country.
41.
That's a very good guess. Just over 40 years. That's an excellent guess. The average school age, you've heard this before. The average school age in Walton County is just over 13 now. That's a big difference. So we were very blessed with facilities. For the last 10 years or 12 or so years, we've had a very aggressive capital outlay program. You know, 10, 12 years ago, we probably had 40, sometimes 50 trailers in our, what we think is a small school district. This past year, we might have part-time used 2. So we're in great shape in terms of space. You all, you know, you see what's going on, the dirt that's being moved, the subdivisions that are going in. So obviously growth is going to continue to come. For the last 5 years, the average growth in our student population has been about 150 students per year. This past year, that actually slowed down. We had not really any growth, even though you see what I see in the subdivision. So it's, even though it's coming, we had kind of a chance to take a breather, which is good. In this economy, we are so glad that we're not planning to build, let's say, a brand new standalone middle school or high school or elementary school. Jackson County, for years, has planned out a roughly a $25 million base high school, which is way cheaper than most high schools usually are. And they were going to add on eventually. And this year, their final price, as of yesterday, was $75 million. And that's not everything they want. We've seen, as you probably have, literally a 25 to 30% jump in construction prices. So we're glad we're just in the, we built our big buildings hopefully for a few years. We're going to take care of what we got, and go back and renovate and take care of those facilities. Our biggest project right now, Loganville High School renovation and addition. It's a $12 million project, 10 classroom addition with auxiliary gym that will take this next school year to finish. And this summer, heavy renovation, all new HVAC, roof, lighting, flooring, etc., kitchen equipment modifications, those kind of things. So we're in the process, and the phone call I took was actually a contractor that hit a water pipe in the middle of the school, and 5,000 gallons of water are right now on the floor of that school. So we're trying to salvage what we can with that project. Outside of that, our next bigger renovation projects will be Bay Creek Elementary School and Walnut Grove Elementary School, our other 2 oldest schools. So those will be heavy renovations as well. And then we get into our prototype elementary schools. We have 6 of the same. You may have seen Youth Elementary, Aether Road. You know, those schools are all the same floor plan, and we'll get into renovating those. So that's a quick facilities update. Let me mention quickly some simple safety things that aren't so simple. We are very blessed with some of the safety features we have in the school district. Nothing is perfect. Nothing will prevent certain things. You guys know that. We could spend $2 million tomorrow at every single school and facility, and nothing is 100%. Okay? You've obviously heard school safety on the news a lot over the last several years. Everybody pictures that active shooter situation, which is still a 1 in a million kind of thing, but we plan for it and we prep for it. We've added safety vegetables in all of our schools now, just basically with the attempt not to make it prison-like, but to secure our entrances, basically. We've added, we think we're probably the only school district within 100 miles for sure, and maybe one of only 2 or 3 in Georgia, that next year will be adding elementary SRO presence. And that's not 1 in every school, but it's almost averaged out to about 1 every 2 schools, but to increase the presence of security at those schools. There are less things that go on that involve the kids at those schools, but there's just as many adult issues sometimes. And that active shooter situation that we all think of, that's really not what the vegetable stops, even though it's going to help slow something like that down should it happen. You know who it stops? It stops a spouse of one of our staff members, or a disgruntled divorced parent of one of our students. Those things happen 40 or 50 times a year, even in Walton County, those domestic issues. I get asked a lot about what's next. 4th cluster, when's that going to come? People have talked for years, you know, where's that next school going? etc. I've heard things like up near Providence, you know, the old tree farm up there, the golf course, things like that. Well, we don't know for sure where it's going to go because it's based on a lot of factors. 90+% of our growth, not surprisingly, still comes from the Gwinnett side. It's Atlanta expanding, so that's not surprising to you. So if we build a school in the Monroe cluster, we've just built a school in an area, the only of 3 clusters that doesn't need relief yet. And so if we did that, it doesn't make sense because everybody else has got to be rezoned to get kids over there, and that disrupts the whole apple cart. My best guess right now is somewhere around the between area because you could easily pull, relieve Loganville, relieve Walnut Grove, and relieve Monroe some. That's a ballpark guess. Now, when is that going to happen and what levels would it start out? Not sure yet. We think we're good for at least another 4+ years in terms of property purchase, etc. And hopefully a few years further than that because of the space we have. If our 150 average growth ramps up because of all these subdivisions and things like that, then we'll obviously have to change the plan and speed. We earn capital outlay funds from the state, but it's you have to follow all these rules. Here's $10 to go with your $1 million, and that's kind of how that works. Wish I had more information on that. I won't bore you with a bunch of numbers. The data is really still rolling in. We won't find out the hard graduation rate until probably September or October, believe it or not. It's such a long vetting process. But the data that's rolled in so far looks fantastic, especially in math, language arts, and literacy. You've probably heard the past governor and maybe even the current governor talk about the importance of reading on grade level by the time you get to 3rd grade. There's really no better indicator of how a student's success will be versus that. If I could give you any advice if you have young children, and that would be what you already know, read to your children, it doesn't take place even in most professional households now. It's not to the tune of what will make a difference. Whatever you might do with your young children or grandchildren, double the effort, because that's a big deal. The average poverty household in Walton County, when they show up to us on day 1 of school, day 1 as a 4-year-old, they're already about 4.5 years behind, and it's called the million-word gap because the literacy didn't take place in the house before they ever even got to us. And we spend lots more money than that average of $8,000 trying to get those children caught up to a professional household that shows up reading on grade level, for lack of better words. That's a huge difference. So we're using some of our title funds and federal program money to try to find a way to go get the kids before they're supposed to come to us, to try to save money on the back end once they are with us, if that makes sense. So that's a huge initiative for us. I hadn't said it yet, but the math, language arts, literacy scores, probably the greatest gains ever, highest level ever, so we've had some fantastic data rolling in. We hope this year to break we broke the graduation rate record last year at 87.7%, and we hope to break that again. We hope we're going to be pushing 90%. Keep in mind that special needs students, my middle son he's 15, but he's 2-year-old mental. So he's in self-contained class. He'll never take Algebra 1 geometry and the 17 state prescribed courses, and because of that, he'll count as a dropout even when he finishes. Most people don't know that. So that group of students, you know, we're roughly 10% special education. So if we can hit 90%, we're not losing a lot of kids, if that makes sense, in terms of true dropouts. So we're doing a better job than ever keeping our kids engaged and finishing school. We've got a great partnership, kind of a renewed aggressive partnership with our development authority and chamber in terms of exposing our students to what's out there. You know, the average 17-year-old can amaze you with what they can do with that iPhone, but they've never heard of your business 2 miles down the road. It's the way it is everywhere. That's not a Walton County problem. That's an everywhere cultural problem everywhere. So we're trying to be aggressive with bringing industry to them and taking them to industry. It's no big mystery. Half of college seniors or half of high school seniors at any high school in America, they don't go anywhere. They go to work. So we want to make sure they know what's in our backyard. Even the ones going to specific training to go to work, and even the ones going to college, we want them to know what careers are in our backyard. So we try to be aggressive in getting careers in our buildings and the kids in our buildings out to their sites. So I'm going to stop right there and let you ask your individual questions. Anything you've ever wondered, pondered?
I have a question.
Yep.
Why are the kids not being taught cursive? They don't even know how to write their names anymore. It just bugs me that they don't know how to write their names.
Penmanship is off, and that's not to pass the buck, but that's a great question for the state of Georgia. I feel like there's value in it because I spent so much time on it in school. But then, other than signing my name on a document, and I probably do it way more than the average person in Walton County does, why don't they turn in their homework like this anymore? Everything is electronic platform. And whether we like it or not in K-12, if they go to any kind of training, and especially college, 100%. My mother asked, me and Dad made my senior son start this summer at Augusta University instead of wait till the fall. And so my mother is like, can we buy him any pens or papers? I said, we've got him a laptop. Everything is electronic platform, backed up in the cloud. He doesn't even need a printer to go with it. You know, it's just, it's a paradigm shift for us because we're used to that. And that doesn't mean it's perfect. That doesn't mean there's not some trade-offs, but that time is going to be spent on how to do things that you can't do on that or on a computer or something like that. And whether that's right or wrong, that's what our state feels like. Now, I can tell you on the elementary level, and you may have never even seen it, and that show up on standardized test scores and things like that, but after we have to test elementary students, for example, about a week and a half before school gets out, because of the time it takes to grade more than just a multiple choice. It's a handwritten short answer kind of thing, so that takes a while to come back for whoever the state pays to grade all that. It comes back. Well, because of that, you've got a few days after that, and everybody has the same problem. So we do enrichment and some other things that the state don't require us to do, and cursive writing and handwriting is one, believe it or not, that we spend some time on. It's not near the time that we used to see. Why don't we offer, you know, shop class? Well, we do, but it's in different ways. It's trying to get more towards what the manufacturers or the local businesses want, and they don't want some of the classes. They have no need for some of these things. If you go walk into Hitachi today, you're not going to see where General Motors. My father-in-law worked 34 years at General Motors. You know, he had the, you know, the elbows wore out and the grease all over things. They had the jumpsuits and all that. Walk into Hitachi, nobody has that, because they're all have a specific training that involves technology, and they're operating computers and robots and things like that, and you can eat off the floor. And that's in most modern, even manufacturing plants.
The million-word gap, is that prevented most by reading or how a parent interacts with their child verbally?
Both. The biggest area is the reading and the time that a parent spends with their child, even before they know how to read. But it's really, in a nutshell, hearing the words used, hearing different words used. Your vocabulary in your professional household is light years away from the vocabulary that's even spoken in a poverty household. Right. Light years away, without doing anything else and not spending dedicated time with your child.
It's fun to watch, and you know, you wonder if it's what we're doing personally or if it's just our child's bright, or hopefully it's both. But a 2.5-year-old that'll answer a question, would you like to have that? No, I do not want that now. I mean, he's able to actually speak that. So we made a decision just to speak to our son like we do to each other. But right. I didn't know if that's just coincidental that he's picking up as much. We do read to him.
He's got to hear it. You know, that's part of learning how to read and write. It's just you got to hear the spoken language correctly. It doesn't happen. And having a house where even when they start school, not just I'm involved, meaning I'm checking your grades twice a semester. You know, it's 24/7. There's no report cards really anymore because you got 24/7 report card right here in my pocket. And I can check it as a parent, although most parents don't. And so they think my involvement is I'm going to get on to you twice a semester because you've got a C. That's not involvement. It's how'd your day go? What'd you do? Did you have any homework? Let me see it. You know, those kind of things. That's a whole different ballgame in terms of involvement and expectation. Who's heard of the McKinney-Vento Act? Probably no one. But in the mid-'80s, the federal government created a law that basically says if you're homeless, you know, when a child moves to school for whatever reasons, even if dad gets a promotion and the family moves over here, when a child moves to school, they're behind about 6 months academically. So you can imagine the poverty, bing, 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 the effects on the child. Well, the federal government says, back in the mid-'80s, that's not your fault. We're going to pass this law that says if you have to move to Bexar County and you were doing so good at 8th Road Elementary School, and your parents have to move in with their parents because of the economy or losing the job, that's not your fault. So we're going to let you stay at 8th Road Elementary School, which is great for you, right? Great intentions. And we're going to give your school district a nickel to make sure you can stay there. Well, first of all, your folks have moved, so where'd their property tax money go? You can stay there. How are you going to get there? So logic would say, well, I guess your parents have got to drive you there. We got to get them there from Bear County. We had 5 kids a couple years ago. 5 kids that live in the city limits of Social Circle. They've got their own school district, not far away. McKinney-Vento students, 5 just right there. So you're thinking, gosh, that's expensive. We have to send a dedicated bus down there to pick them up and take them to school. No, we have to send several buses because did I say they all went to the same school? Because this one left Loganville High School, this one left Harmony Elementary School, this one left Walton Park. You see the issue now? Now think about the last 10 years in the economic crunch we've had. How many people were out of jobs and qualified for McKinney-Vento? Lunch. The federal government sends us $45,000 for that, and it might cost $400,000. Now the other counties have the same problem, so we might meet in county lines. We even have some situations that it makes more sense financially to pay a cab or Uber every day because it's way cheaper than that big diesel bus when to pick somebody up. That's one example of 50 crazy ideas, great intentions, but we're left holding the bag in terms of how to get it covered and things like that. Sometimes I get asked about students. You didn't ask this, but I see 2 kids on the bus at 6:30 at night. Well, if you do, it's because hopefully they're the last 2 to be dropped off, and that's not part of our normal day. Even though it's still tax dollars, that's a federal grant that we've won, our 21st Century After School program. It's dropping off basically at-risk students for an after-school program, totally separate. Still tax money, very different pot of money. What percentage of that budget I just mentioned goes directly out the door to salaries and benefits? Anybody would guess the percentage of our budget? $131 million. What percent? Just our people. We're in the people business, whether we want to be or not. What percentage?
Third.
90%. 90. We do everything else with 10%. So if you ever wonder why the teacher asks you to buy paper and glue and paper towels, that's why. It sounds crazy. Oh, I pay my tax money. 90%, because the cost of people, you felt the cost of people in your business, I imagine, haven't you, in the last 10 years? Healthcare, those kinds of things, skyrocketing. Just in the last 8 years, our certified folks cost us the money we send in for their healthcare, for state health benefit, was $146. It's ratcheted up in the last 8 years. Guess how much we paid our part for their health insurance? One person, 1 month. How much do we send in? $946
Wow.
per person per month. And now the classified has come up with certified, so that's all employees. So do some math, 2,000 employees, $946 per month we send in. That's come up from 146 just in the last 8 years. That's without us doing anything to get any better academically, period. One example. TRS, same thing, teacher retirement. So it's a lot of movement. That's essentially why whatever new comes in, usually 90% of it, unfunded mandates right out the door. That's the challenge, to do more and to be better with whatever's left. What else?
You check into getting some options for children that are gluten intolerant.
They're what now?
Gluten intolerant. They have.
You talking about the lunchroom?
Yeah, I know at Walker Park they had salads, and then they started adding fried chicken to the salads. So now there's nothing there.
Is it added before, like while it's made? Or?
I think it. I don't know. I think it used to be grilled chicken, and they added the fried chicken to get an extra grain in the milk. That's what I was told.
Yeah, there's our federal government. We have to have a federal grant, and it's finally loosened up under the current administration. Not getting into politics, but it's loosened up dramatically for us in terms of what we can do. Obviously, during the previous administration, with the mandates on the federal meal plan. Matter of fact, the federal government tells us when we can raise milk prices and when we have to, and how much. without, no matter what's going on in Walton County, they tell us, and it's based on the kids that pay, even if we feel like we can stay afloat financially, they tell us, well, you have to raise it 20 cents because the federal amount that we reimburse, some kind of big magic formula. And then the perfect storm, when I went to high school, nutrition programs in the county were part of the school district. And of course you're thinking, well, aren't they still? They still are, but they have to be a standalone business now. They have to survive on their own. That's the biggest change from when we went to school until now. Big change in terms of quality. And then the three perfect storm items happened. The price of people has skyrocketed. That's the biggest problem. So they're a small business now. We're a bigger business. Now, when the governor says, we want to give classified folks a 2% raise, well, that's great. Even though all the money didn't come, we have other ways to absorb because of all our programs. They're one small, so all their employees now have a 2% raise, which we love it for them, but they really they can't afford it. In the last 10 years, because of the administrative push down of healthy food, all that stuff, not that it's not well intended, way more cost in terms of the healthy food. Way more, or a higher percentage of students not participating because of the healthy food, a lot of throwaways, etc. We're just not participating at all. And then you throw in the cost of people, and it's the perfect storm. There is no public school district around here that has a nutrition program that's staying afloat. Their fund balances over the last decade has done that. That's one reason why you see less choices, a combination of things. They've loosened up some of that, but the price of people hasn't gone down yet. That's still a big dagger. And the food is better than you think. You didn't ask this question, but take chicken nuggets, for example. The combi of us, the food is better than you think. The problem is being able to afford, because you got to be a standalone business, the number of people to create the food and have it prepped at the same time. Nobody can do that. Nobody can afford to do that. So you got to bring them in earlier, and the food has to sit for an hour or so under a warming lamp or whatever, so it doesn't taste as good. You didn't ask that question, but that's a big issue too. Food free. We have a nutrition director that could probably talk 3 hours on that.
I've learned a lot in the last few years since my granddaughter
Yeah.
started having problems. And for a while, she would do salad 1 or 2 days a week and take her lunch the rest of the week. Now there's nothing.
What school she in?
That would work.
What else?
Any more questions?
If you think Johnny's highly regulated in the banking world, come to the school district. We'll show you regulated. We'll show you regulated.
Down to what you teach.
What's that?
I said down to what you teach.
Oh, yeah.
I was on a curriculum with a curriculum group, creating new curriculum for middle school ag ed. And that was a very eye-opening.
It's no surprise to anybody in here, but obviously, you know, our transiency, especially with a hotter economy, our transiency rate's up, move in, move outs is up. From our Gwinnett, Atlanta side, you know, just a lot more transiency. I can tell you, Bay Creek Elementary School has probably changed more than any school, believe it or not. You might not think that, but just in the last year or two it has. Outside of English and then Spanish, what would you guess is the third most popular spoken language in Walton County?
Mom, people.
Y'all heard me say that.
Yeah, that's what I said.
The Hmong.
Houses.
The Hmong people. Yep. Asian descent near Vietnam, we use their land for bases and promised them refuge after the Vietnam War. That happened on the West Coast, and they've slowly made it to the East Coast, and it's actually spread out. Bay Creek, but also around Walker Park, some different areas. So that's the third highest. I want to say like 150 of our students. Growing fast. Our ESOL population is growing fast. All the things I'm talking about cost more money. Special education population is up, spiked in the last year. One example, there's a group of parents in one neighborhood in Bay Creek, and you and I, most people in this room would call this doing the Lord's work, and it is. They decided, in the foster world, they were foster parents, and they decided they're going to go a step above, and they told the state of Georgia, send us kids that are hardest to place that you guys struggle placing. You're emotionally disturbed, EBD students, etc. And that's, you know, God bless them for doing that. And this group of people basically took in like 10 or 12 kids. So in one weekend at one school, those kids showed up, and we have to, it's just a different ballgame, you know. the state of Georgia says when you reach 6 kids, you know, a teacher to pair, you have to open up another class. So that's an expensive thing to do. And by the way, good luck finding a teacher on October the 4th with those specific certifications. Awful challenging, awful expensive. Great for them to do that kind of work, but those are the kind of challenges that show up overnight. What else?
You good, Paul?
Clear as mud?
Clear as mud. Thank you.
Are you in need of tractor work, bush hogging, grading, cleaning, sod installs, and drainage repair? Then you need Bold Springs Landscape Solutions. Bold Springs Landscape Solutions is a licensed, insured, and certified landscape solutions company. Their services include grading and drainage, bush hogging and clearing work, as well as fencing, landscape, and sod installation. Contact Bold Springs Landscape Solutions today. Creative Artists can offer you a wide range of video production. Call the experts and discuss your project today, whether it's your special event or your company. Creative Artist, 770-267-7368. Creative Artist produces this program you're watching. Call Creative Artist today, 770-267-7368. Creative Artist, they'll put you in the spotlight.
This will be a tour of Rest Haven Cemetery. It's an old one. It's one of the older ones here in Monroe. It started about the same time that Monroe did. The section that we'll be going into first will be the oldest section of Rest Haven Cemetery. Now, it's still an active cemetery. We have just north of 3,000 people buried here, and I think the last funeral we had was 2 weeks ago today, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more. Now, I've got a little problem with my legs, so I'm going to be tooling around in the golf cart, but I promise I won't run off and leave you. And if anybody has any questions while we go, please be sure to ask, and if I know the answer, I'll tell you, and if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know the answer. Before we get started, how many Georgia Tech fans do we have here? There we go. We got a few Georgia Tech fans. Okay, our first stop is right here. Hal Gordon Nowell. He was born in March of 1870 and died in February of 1921. Now, Hal was in the second graduating class of Georgia Tech and was also a trustee for that institution for a number of years. He was a big fan of the Georgia Tech football team and was sort of a mentor for some of their players. And one of them that has kind of a history around here is a man by the name of David Red Barron. And Red Barron, he played both sides on both sides of the ball, and is also in the Georgia Tech Hall of Fame. He was in the class of 1922. Now, when Hal died in 1921, the Atlanta Constitution published a picture of him wearing his honorary Letterman sweater from Georgia Tech, and they say that he was actually buried in it. So right down here is a Georgia Tech sweater from 1921. There was also an hour of quietness at Georgia Tech that was reported in the paper. And in the 1990s, they were successful in getting him listed as an actual Letterman at Georgia Tech. So that's Hal Nowell. And our next stop is going to be really right here. In these Victorian type cemeteries, you'll find a lot of symbolism, sometimes in plants and sometimes on the monuments themselves. And we'll see a little more of that here in just a minute. But the first one I wanted to point out to you was this headstone right here next to the larger one here. It looks like a stack of rocks, and that's pretty common in Victorian cemeteries. What the stack of rocks indicates is a life lived on a firm religious foundation. So we're going to head right down this way, and we're going to see a little bit more symbolism. We have a lot of symbolism just in this little area here. You'll notice these two monuments over here have books on top of them. This monument here also has a book on top of it. Now this one is open. It's an open book. That indicates perfect knowledge. That's an open Bible, and that's knowledge that we know. If you look at this one over here, it's a closed book, and the binding is on the left side. And what that indicates is hidden knowledge. That's knowledge that we won't know until we get to heaven. Now the one over right next to it looks a lot like this one. The only difference is the binding is over on the other side. And that's what a book would look like once you finish reading the book and close it. It would look like that, and that represents a completed life. Now you'll also find that this one here has a shroud on it, which represents grief. All four of these, there's four of these here that have opening gates. That represents the gates of heaven. See, this one here has a cross and a crown. That represents the sovereignty of the Lord. This one here has a crown, which represents heavenly reward. And I think one over here has a star, which represents heavenly knowledge or godly knowledge. And as we go through, you will see some other older graves that do have symbolism, and a lot of them have flowers and that kind of thing, and that's what they all are. This is the area that are the graves that we're going to be looking at now. This is a monument for Charles Davis, and this is his sister, Fanny Patillo. And Charles Davis was born in 1796 in Vermont, and as a young man came down to Walton County. Well, by the early 1820s, he was living here in Monroe. He was an attorney by trade. He was a state legislator, and he was pretty involved in land acquisition. Now in the 1840s, he bought the Davis Edwards house, which is up here on Broad Street. It's the headquarters for the Historical Society of Walton County now. He bought that along with 43 acres. Now later in his life, when he was 71, he was a member of the Georgia Constitutional Convention and also was a circuit judge during that area. Now when he died, they actually buried him on his property up around probably the Davis Edward house or somewhere up there. And when they had some road construction, they moved he and his sister's monuments over here. She was buried around there too. So they're, as far as we know, they're not buried here. And that would make these two monuments called a cenotaph. What that is a monument that doesn't have a grave with it. And there's a few of them that we're going to find today, but this was our first one, and Charles Davis was kind of the main one here. And we're going to head kind of back over here to the corner of the cemetery for our next stop. Yeah, there was an urn on top of this, but Gail has it right now. We're going to try to get it fixed. This is the final resting place of Oscar Everett Carter. Now, Mr. Carter was born in 1860, and he passed away in 1893. He owned a saloon over on Broad Street, and as far as we can tell, it was over where Your Pie is located now. So if y'all know where, that's kind of a new place. That's where his saloon was. Now, on December the 23rd, 1893, he was over at the saloon, and he had sort of gotten into his supply a little bit. He had gotten pretty liquored up and came up with a really bad idea. He decided he'd get his gun and go out there on Broad Street and shoot it up a little bit. So he proceeded to do that, and he was out firing his gun all up and down Broad Street. And there was a private citizen by the name of John Galloway that sort of snuck up behind him. And while the sheriff, whose name was Claude Arnold, was out front trying to reason with Mr. Carter. Well, as things would happen, Mr. Carter was shot dead. Now the sheriff decided to take credit for this, but from people from back around that area or that time thought that maybe the private citizen Galloway had actually done the shooting, but Sheriff Arnold decided if he took blame for it, since he was the sheriff, it would be a little easier to sort of get past. Now, my understanding, also, Mr. Carter was something of a character other than that. And at one time, there was an elephant out here in Monroe that he volunteered to keep, I think overnight, and after that, they took the elephant into Atlanta. Now, how would you like to have walked with an elephant from Monroe to downtown Atlanta? So that's what that guy did. But Mr. Carter's claim to fame, I guess, was the way he was shot. This is a little bit more of the symbolism that we were talking about. If you see this one, it has a lamb, which represents innocence, and a stump, a cut stump, which represents a life cut short. And you'll see both of those a lot on children's graves. Of course, this one here, I think she or he was just a few years old when they passed away. So that's what that symbolism means. Now, one, I think, of the most interesting monuments here at Rest Haven is the one that we're standing next to right now. And this one's sort of one of those that that kind of people can kind of point out Rest Haven from. They'll drive by and see this monument, and then you know they'll realize that it is Rest Haven Cemetery. This is a monument in memory of Matthew Talbot Nunley. Now he accepted a place at the United States Military Academy in 1858, and when the war between the states started in 1861, he resigned and joined the Confederate Army. He was granted a commission of captain, and he was the company commander of Company H of the 11th Georgia Volunteer Infantry. That was also known as the Walton Volunteers. Now he was killed in action in 1863 at the Battle of Gettysburg. It was the attack on Devil's Den, Longstreet's attack on the Devil's Den. Now his body was not recovered. Still, as far as we know, it's still up there. But his sister Mary, whose monument is right over here, Mary Standage, made an offer to the city that she would fully fund a statue for the courthouse if they would use her brother's image. And that request was turned down. So she had this monument made. That's an actual an image of Matthew Talbot Nunley. As you can see, there's some damage to it in the early 1990s. Storm knocked it off. But originally he was facing north, and when they replaced it facing to the southlands. Now he also served with Henry McDaniel, who we'll see a little bit later on, who was going to be a governor of Georgia after the war. If you get on Highway 78 running from Monroe to Athens, you'll see that that's called the Mowena Michaels Memorial Highway. And Mowena Michaels is one of our really famous residents here. This is her final resting place right here. Now she's also known as the Poppy Lady. She was born near Good Hope, Georgia. She went to boarding school and came back home when she was about 15 years old. Well, her mother was kind of concerned that there wasn't money in the community to have a teacher, so she had Mowena begin teaching there in Good Hope, actually in a log cabin on her father's cotton plantation. She taught there until they sold the cotton plantation. They all moved up here to Monroe, and she continued teaching to help support the family. Now she ended up being an administrator and an educator at the University of Georgia. And when World War I started, she took a leave of absence and went to work for the YMCA Volunteer War Workers Unit. That was up in New York. She had read Hal McRae's poem in Flanders Fields a number of times. But on November the 9th, 1918, 2 days before Armistice Day, she was reading it again there in her office. And the second half of that poem really got to her. And it's actually on her monument here. To you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. And she decided right then that she was going to be wearing an artificial poppy from then on in memory of those soldiers who had died in World War I. Well, by 1919, she was back at the University of Georgia and taught one class that had a number of disabled veterans from the war. And so she realized that they still needed help, so she began selling those poppies in order to help the disabled veterans. And this is something that's gone on up until the present day. There's been hundreds of millions of dollars that have been raised from the selling of these poppies. She was given a letter by General Pershing thanking her for her patriotism in doing this. So there's a monument actually down at the courthouse that's just been put up there within the past year in memory and in honor of Miss Mowena Michaels. So she's one of our nationally famous residents here. This, the slab grave marker down here on the very end is the final resting place of General George Hearn. Now in 1925, he joined the Georgia National Guard and served in every enlisted rank until 1932 when he was commissioned to second lieutenant. During World War II and Korea, he served on active duty. And in the 1950s, Governor Herman Talmadge appointed him the Adjutant General of the state. He was kind of in charge of the whole National Guard. 4 other governors after Talmadge also appointed him to that, so he stayed in that position until the 1970s. He was also a mayor of Monroe. He was president of the Monroe Golf and Country Club. He was a state commander of the American Legion and also helped in the family business here downtown, Hearn Hardware.
Are you in need of tractor work, bush hogging, grading, cleaning, sod installs, and drainage repair? Then you need Bold Springs Landscape Solutions. Bold Springs Landscape Solutions is a licensed, insured, and certified landscape solutions company. Their services include grading and drainage, bush hogging and clearing work, as well as fencing, landscape, and sod installation. Contact Bold Springs Landscape Solutions today.